For 76 years, the wreck of the USS Lexington CV-2 was lost to the deep, her fate swallowed by the Coral Sea after a battle that changed the rules of war. She began as an experiment, a battle cruiser reborn by treaty, rebelling against every naval tradition, only to face Japan's finest in the world's first carrier-only clash. But in 1942, what started as America's symbol of innovation ended in catastrophe as gasoline fumes turned hope into fire. Now explorers have found Lady Lex nearly 2 miles down, almost untouched, yet haunted by secrets. What went so wrong beneath her steel decks? The real story begins where myth and memory collide. She was born not from war, but from the ashes of peace. In 1922, as nations gathered in Washington to halt an arms race, the United States laid down the hull of a battlecruiser, then by treaty was ordered to stop. Yet, steel already set to shape would not be wasted. The unfinished Lexington was transformed, her bones bent to a new purpose. Instead of turrets and armor, she received a flight deck nearly 3 football fields long. Instead of broadsides, she carried the promise of air power, nearly 100 warplanes poised to leap into the sky. They called her Lady Lex. Her insides pulsed with a marvel, a turbo-electric drive, the first of its kind in a U.S. carrier, humming with 180,000 horsepower. In 1929, when drought struck Tacoma, Washington, she turned her generator shoreward, lighting a city and proving her worth in peacetime as well as war. Her decks echoed with the sound of innovation. Flight crews drilled in new tactics, mock raids, surprise launches, lessons that would echo across oceans. She was a floating laboratory, her crew learning how to turn a city of steel into a weapon of speed and reach. Every corridor, every hatch, every rivet carried the weight of experiment. She was not built for the war she would fight, but her builders believed she could survive anything. The world was changing, and Lady Lex would show what a carrier could become. Port Moresby lay crouched at the edge of the Coral Sea, its fate a thread stretched taut between continents. If the Japanese took it, the door to Australia would swing wide open, supply lines cut, an entire continent threatened. In May 1942, 2 fleets set their courses by that single point on the map. The Imperial Japanese Navy advanced with practiced confidence, their eyes fixed on conquest. Their spearhead, the carriers Shukaku and Zuikaku, veterans of Pearl Harbor, bristling with fighters and bombers. Each strike group drilled for the kill. Their orders were clear: crush all resistance, seize the airfield, and complete the ring around Australia. Across the sea, Lady Lex steamed with Yorktown at her side, every man aboard knowing what hung in the balance. This would not be a battle of dreadnoughts trading thunder across the horizon. Instead, 2 armadas would hunt each other through clouds and static, their ships invisible, their fate decided by pilots and radio signals. For the first time in naval history, carriers would duel alone. No battleships in sight, only the distant roar of engines and the crackle of intercepted codes. Both sides moved in shadow. American intelligence officers pored over intercepted signals, piecing together Japan's plan to strike south. Admiral Fletcher gambled everything, pushing his carriers into the Coral Sea to intercept the invasion force. Every hour brought new reports. Enemy ships sighted, scout planes lost, radio silence breaking with bursts of static. The tension wound tighter with each passing mile. Port Moresby's survival, the safety of Australia, and the future of the Pacific all balanced on the outcome of a battle no one had fought before. The first torpedo punched through Lexington's port bow, flooding boiler rooms and jamming her elevators skyward. A second slammed home near the bridge, rupturing water mains and aviation gasoline tanks deep below the hangar. Within minutes, the carrier listed hard to port, her engines faltering as counter-flooding crews scrambled in the dark, knee-deep in rising water and fumes. Then came the bombs, one detonating a ready ammunition locker, another shattering the gun gallery and igniting fires that clawed through compartments. The flight deck, still crowded with fueled and armed aircraft, became a trap for gasoline vapors seeping from split lines and battered tanks. At 12:47, a muffled blast erupted beneath the forward elevator. Gasoline vapor, swirling unseen through the lower decks, found a spark. The explosion tore steel bulkheads apart, killed dozens in an instant, and knocked out the main damage control station. Overhead lights died, phones went dead, and the forward half of Lady Lex became a maze of smoke, fire, and silence. Firefighting teams fought on, dragging hoses through choking corridors. But each new explosion drove them back. First one, then another at 14:42, lifting the elevator clear off its tracks and plunging the hangar into darkness. Water pressure failed, pumps sputtered, and the fire main collapsed. Buckets and chemical extinguishers replaced hoses, but the flames only spread faster. By mid-afternoon, Lexington's heart was lost. The ship drifted, powerless, as gasoline-fed fires raged unchecked below. When the order finally came to abandon ship, it was not for lack of courage, but because every system meant to save her had been beaten by fire and steel. The destroyer Phelps stood by, her torpedoes ready to do what the sea had not yet finished. Smoke rolled through the Lexington's passageways thick as midnight, stinging the eyes of men who had spent hours fighting fires with bare hands. Captain Frederick Sherman stood on the bridge, his uniform streaked with sweat and soot, watching the flames swallow the heart of his ship. The order came in a voice steady as steel. "We're getting out. Save as many as you can." Sherman waited until the last group had gone, searching every compartment for stragglers, refusing to leave until he was certain no one remained behind. Below decks, machinist Donald Rice moved through the choking dark, guiding blinded shipmates toward the ladder wells. He made trip after trip into the engine spaces, hauling men out of flooded compartments, ignoring burns and the roar of explosions overhead. Rice's hands bled from torn metal. His lungs burned, but he pressed on, pulling men to safety until he collapsed on the hangar deck, refusing rescue until others had gone first. More than 2,700 sailors and Marines escaped the inferno that day, each one owing their lives to the calm of their captain and the grit of men like Rice. The cost was written in silence. 216 never returned. On the water, lifeboats drifted in the oily dusk, survivors watching the Lady Lex wreathed in fire. The only home many had ever known was slipping beneath the horizon. In that moment, courage was measured not in medals, but in the hands that reached back for one more shipmate, and the voice that refused to abandon hope. March 24th, 2018. The research vessel Petrel slices through the Coral Sea, guided not by rumor or luck, but by a grid drawn from battle logs and drift calculations. For 6 months, the team has mapped, modeled, and debated every current, every possible resting place. Their quarry lies 2 miles down beyond sunlight and human reach. On deck, engineers monitor side-scan sonar as the AUV sweeps the seabed in careful lines. Each pass is a gamble against darkness and time. The sonar returns a ghostly outline, a shape too deliberate to be chance. Now the ROV descends, bristling with cameras and lights, its tether a lifeline to the world above. The first images flicker up. Aircraft still bearing squadron insignia. Gun mounts frozen in silent watch. At 3,000 meters, Lady Lex waits, untouched since the day she fell. News of the Lexington's rediscovery traveled quickly, crossing oceans and generations. For families who had lived with absence, grandchildren who grew up with stories instead of faces, there was a sudden, quiet reckoning. Admiral Harry Harris, son of a survivor, spoke for many. As the son of a survivor of the USS Lexington, I offer my congratulations to Paul Allen and the expedition crew of research vessel Petrel. In living rooms and veterans' halls, the past came home. Letters arrived. Phone calls were made. Old photographs were touched with new reverence. The Navy's announcement echoed through headlines, but the real weight settled in private moments. Relief, pride, and the soft closing of an old wound. For some, it was the first time in decades that loss felt less like emptiness and more like belonging to a story finally told. On May 8, 1942, the USS Lexington was lost in the Coral Sea with 216 crew members killed and 2,135 rescued, numbers confirmed by official Navy after-action reports. Decades later, on March 4, 2018, the wreck was identified nearly 3,000 meters below the surface by the RV Petrel team, revealing aircraft still marked with U.S. insignia and preserving a chapter of naval history long thought unreachable. Yet some details about Lexington's final moments, including classified wartime communications and the exact sequence of explosions, remain restricted or debated among historians. The Battle of the Coral Sea is now recognized as a turning point, marking the first carrier versus carrier conflict and halting Japan's advance toward Australia. Today, the discovery of Lady Lex's wreck offers tangible closure for descendants and historians alike and stands as evidence of both technological progress and enduring remembrance. The facts unearthed from archival records and the ocean floor remind us that even after 76 years, the legacy of sacrifice and innovation endures, etched in steel and in memory. For 76 years, the wreck of the USS Lexington CV-2 was lost to the deep, her fate swallowed by the Coral Sea after a battle that changed the rules of war. She began as an experiment, a battle cruiser reborn by treaty, rebelling against every naval tradition, only to face Japan's finest in the world's first carrier-only clash. But in 1942, what started as America's symbol of innovation ended in catastrophe as gasoline fumes turned hope into fire. Now explorers have found Lady Lex nearly 2 miles down, almost untouched, yet haunted by secrets. What went so wrong beneath her steel decks? The real story begins where myth and memory collide. She was born not from war, but from the ashes of peace. In 1922, as nations gathered in Washington to halt an arms race, the United States laid down the hull of a battle cruiser, then, by treaty, was ordered to stop. Yet steel already set to shape would not be wasted. The unfinished Lexington was transformed, her bones bent to a new purpose. Instead of turrets and armor, she received a flight deck nearly 3 football fields long.